"He's not asleep," the little street urchin declared to the millionaire grieving his son. Then she took the boy's hand, and seconds later everyone was in shock when they saw that. Comment and give my story a rating from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The silence in the luxurious mansion was broken only by the muffled sound of sobs echoing through the grand main hall. White lilies covered every surface, creating a fragrant sea that contrasted with the raw grief hanging in the air. In the center of the room, a small, polished mahogany casket received the last respects from a bereaved society, dressed in black and whispering empty condolences. The 30-year-old widowed millionaire remained motionless beside the casket, his green eyes fixed on the pale face of his 4-year-old son. His hands trembled imperceptibly as he adjusted his black tie for the 10th time, a nervous gesture he'd developed since amassing his fortune investing in Wall Street stocks. Each movement was calculated, controlled, as if he could maintain composure through the discipline that had made him one of the wealthiest men in the sprawling metropolis. The boy's cruel stepmother, an ambitious 40-year-old woman with perfectly coiffed blonde hair, circulated among the guests with tears that seemed rehearsed. Her designer black dress cost more than many people earned in a year, and she wore mourning like a calculated performance. Her icy blue eyes observed every detail, every reaction, calculating how this tragedy could be turned into personal advantage. The family doctor, a middle-aged man with a graying beard and gold-rimmed glasses, spoke in hushed tones with other professionals present. His words were technical, clinical, explaining how a sudden case of pneumonia had taken the boy in a matter of days. But something in his posture suggested discomfort, as if he carried a weight beyond professional responsibility. In the back of the mansion, away from the eyes of high society, a humble 42-year-old cleaning lady discreetly wiped away the last traces of the wake preparations. Her movements were silent, almost invisible, like someone who had learned to exist in the shadows. She paused occasionally to observe the ceremony through the partly open door, her brown eyes carrying a sadness that seemed disproportionately deep for a simple maid. It was in this moment of respectful silence that the main doors of the mansion burst open. A gust of cold wind swept through the room, causing the candles to flicker and the flowers to sway. The guests turned toward the entrance, expecting to see another late mourner, but what they saw left them paralyzed. A 4-year-old street urchin stumbled into the hall, her appearance so frail that she seemed only 2. Her clothes were dirty, tattered rags, her bare feet left muddy prints on the polished marble, and her dark hair was tangled as if it hadn't been combed in weeks. But it was her eyes that were most shocking, large, dark, and shining with an intensity that didn't belong to such a small child. Murmurs of indignation began immediately. How had a beggar gotten into the most guarded property in the area? Where was security? Scandal gripped those present, who instinctively recoiled from the little intruder as if she carried some contagious disease. The street urchin completely ignored the commotion around her. Her eyes were fixed on the casket, as if a magnetic force pulled her toward the center of the room. Each step was determined, despite her trembling legs barely supporting her. Tears streamed down her dirty cheeks, creating clean trails that revealed the pale skin beneath the grime. The widowed millionaire finally reacted, stepping forward to intercept the child. His voice came out harsher than he intended. "How did you get in here? Where are your parents?" But the street urchin didn't answer. She gently pushed the man aside with a surprising strength for her size and continued toward the casket. The guests watched in horror as she approached the body, her small hands reaching out toward the boy's face. "He's not leaving," she said in a crystal-clear voice that echoed through the silent hall. "I can see. He's still here." The cruel stepmother immediately advanced, her face contorted in fury. "Get that child out of here! This is a desecration! How dare you allow a beggar?" But her words were cut short when the street urchin delicately touched the cold hand of the boy in the casket. What happened next made everyone present freeze in absolute shock. The boy's pale fingers twitched slightly, a movement so subtle that it could have been imagination, but everyone saw it. The silence became deafening as everyone in the hall held their breath, waiting, watching. Slowly, as if emerging from a deep dream, the boy's eyelids fluttered. One by one the guests recoiled, some whispering prayers, others seeking rational explanations for the impossible that unfolded before their eyes. The family doctor dropped his coffee cup, which shattered on the marble floor with a sound that cut through the silence like a blade. The boy's eyes slowly opened, revealing dilated pupils that took several seconds to focus on the surroundings. His breathing, which had ceased completely 3 days earlier, returned in shallow, uneven gasps. His first words were an almost inaudible whisper. "Why is everyone crying?" Chaos erupted in the hall. Screams of terror mingled with exclamations of miracle. Some people fainted, others ran for the exit, and many simply stood paralyzed, unable to process what they had just witnessed. Cell phones were pulled out to record the moment, flashes went off, and the buzz of hysterical conversations filled the air. The widowed millionaire fell to his knees beside the casket, his hands trembling violently as he touched his son's warm face. Tears streamed freely down his face, a display of emotion he hadn't allowed himself in years. All his wealth, all his assets built with calculated investments and cold decisions, none of it mattered at that moment compared to the miracle unfolding before him. The street urchin remained beside the casket, observing the confusion with a serene expression that contrasted drastically with her frail appearance. But something in her eyes had changed. A shadow of pain passed over her small face, as if the act of bringing the boy back had cost something precious that she couldn't recover. She stumbled slightly, her strength failing, but she stood through sheer determination. The cruel stepmother watched everything with an expression that shifted rapidly between shock and something much darker. Her calculating eyes were already beginning to process the implications of this extraordinary event, and an expression of growing distrust took over her perfectly made-up face. 3 days had passed since the extraordinary event at the mansion, and the sprawling metropolis seethed with rumors about the miracle that defied all known logic. Journalists surrounded the gates of the property. Television cameras positioned themselves strategically on the adjacent streets, and experts from all fields were called upon to try to explain the inexplicable. Inside the mansion, the widowed millionaire watched his son play in the garden through the panoramic window of his office. The boy seemed perfectly normal, running among the rose bushes with the typical energy of a 4-year-old, but there was something different about his movements. His gestures were more deliberate, as if each action was carefully considered before being executed. "Daddy, why are those people always shouting outside?" the boy asked, entering the office with cheeks flushed from exercise. His words carried a strange maturity, as if years of experience had been compressed into the few days since his awakening. The widowed millionaire knelt to be at his son's height, studying his blue eyes carefully. "They're just curious people, son. Don't worry about them." But internally, he wrestled with questions that threatened his sanity. How could he scientifically explain what he had witnessed? How could a man who had built his fortune on Bitcoin and logical investments accept something so outside of reality? The street urchin had been installed in one of the guest rooms, but her presence in the house created palpable tension. She refused to talk about her origins or explain how she had performed the impossible. She spent most of her time in silence, observing everything with those large, penetrating eyes that seemed to see beyond the surface of things. The cruel stepmother couldn't hide her growing irritation. Each meal became a silent battlefield, with venomous glances directed at the little intruder who had disturbed her carefully laid plans. During dinner, she cut the meat with unnecessary force. the sound of the knife against the plate echoing like a veiled threat. "Don't you think it's time we found a suitable place for this child?" she suggested, her voice too sweet to be sincere. "Surely there are specialized institutions that could take better care of her." The widowed millionaire raised his eyes from his plate, his expression hardening. "She saved my son. As long as I breathe, she will have a home here." His words carried the authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that moved millions of dollars, but they also revealed a vulnerability that he rarely showed. Meanwhile, in the back of the house, the humble cleaning lady cleaned the rooms with mechanical movements, but her eyes couldn't stay away from the street urchin whenever she appeared in the hallways. There was something familiar about that child that disturbed her deeply, a sense of recognition that she couldn't explain. Her hands trembled when she held the cleaning supplies, and more than once she had to lean against the wall to avoid fainting. The family doctor visited the house daily, performing endless examinations on the resurrected boy. His most sophisticated equipment couldn't detect any anomaly, which only increased his perplexity. He had studied medicine for decades, published articles in respected scientific journals, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for this. "His vital signs are completely normal," he muttered to himself, reviewing the results for the 100th time. "Stable body temperature, perfect blood pressure, properly functioning neurological reflexes. It's as if he never—" He stopped before completing the sentence, unable to pronounce the word that defied his medical understanding. During these first weeks, strange events began to occur in the mansion. Objects moved without explanation, temperatures varied drastically between rooms, and inexplicable sounds echoed through the corridors during the early morning hours. The employees began to whisper among themselves about supernatural phenomena, but the widowed millionaire refused to listen to superstitions. The street urchin seemed to be the center of these events. Wherever she went, wilted flowers bloomed again, injured animals recovered miraculously, and sick people felt temporary relief from their suffering. But each small miracle seemed to drain her strength, leaving her paler and more fragile each day. It was during one of these weeks that the first disturbing revelation came to light. The street urchin was exploring the mansion's library when she discovered a secret drawer in the antique desk. Inside it, she found a leather-bound diary, its pages yellowed with time, revealing the delicate handwriting of the millionaire's late wife. The words, written years before, spoke of strange dreams, visions of special children in the area, and a growing sense that forces beyond human understanding influenced their lives. The wife had documented encounters with people who possessed inexplicable gifts, and her last entry, dated just a week before her passing, specifically mentioned a little girl who could awaken those who sleep the eternal sleep. When the street urchin showed the diary to the widowed millionaire, he was paralyzed. The hands that had signed million-dollar contracts trembled as he flipped through the pages that revealed a completely unknown side of his late wife. How could she have known about supernatural gifts? Why had she never mentioned these experiences to him? The cruel stepmother watched the discovery with growing agitation. Each revelation seemed to threaten her position in the house even more, and she began to realize that perhaps her plans needed to be accelerated. During the night, she discreetly searched other rooms of the mansion, looking for more evidence that she could use to her advantage or destroy if necessary. The resurrected boy also began to exhibit significant behavioral changes. He talked about places he had never visited, drew complex symbols he shouldn't know, and sometimes seemed to talk to invisible people in the corners of the rooms. When questioned about these behaviors, he simply smiled and said that special friends visited him to play. The tension in the mansion reached a critical point when, during a particularly violent storm, all the lights in the house flickered simultaneously at the exact moment when the street urchin had a mysterious seizure. She fell to the floor of the living room, her small body shaking violently as incomprehensible words came out of her lips. When she finally calmed down, her first words were, "She didn't pass naturally. Someone made her pass." The family doctor, who was present during the episode, was visibly shaken. His hands trembled as he checked the girl's vital signs, and when the widowed millionaire asked about the meaning of those words, he looked away and mumbled something about delusions caused by fever. But the guilt in his eyes suggested that he knew exactly what the child was talking about. That same night, the humble cleaning lady had a nervous breakdown in the back of the house. She was found sobbing uncontrollably in the cleaning supply closet, repeating the name Clara several times before fainting. When she awoke, she remembered nothing, but her eyes carried a terror she couldn't explain. The situation became even more complex when private investigators hired by the media discovered that the street urchin had appeared in the area only a few months before, with no official record of her existence. There was no birth certificate, medical records, or any documentation proving her identity. It was as if she had simply materialized out of thin air. External pressures on the widowed millionaire intensified dramatically. His business partners questioned his mental stability, suggesting that grief had affected his judgment. Some threatened to withdraw their investments if he continued indulging in supernatural fantasies. His fortune, built with careful investments and consistent profitability, began to show signs of instability for the first time in years. The cruel stepmother seized this vulnerability to intensify her campaign against the street urchin. She began spreading subtle rumors among the staff about the child's strange behavior, suggesting that her presence brought bad luck to the house. Small accidents began to happen more frequently: broken dishes, inexplicable stumbles, and equipment malfunctioning for no apparent reason. 2 months had passed since the discovery of the diary, and the atmosphere in the mansion had become suffocating. The street urchin visibly deteriorated, her skin taking on a sickly pallor that contrasted dramatically with the growing vitality of the resurrected boy. Each day seemed to drain more of her essence, as if the miracle she had performed continued to exact a cruel and constant price. The family doctor arrived every morning with obsessive punctuality, but his examinations revealed increasingly worrying results. The girl showed signs of severe malnutrition despite eating regularly, and her body temperature fluctuated inexplicably. During a particularly tense consultation, he finally revealed information he had kept secret for decades. "There are things you need to know," he said, removing his gold-rimmed glasses with trembling hands. "In 1987, I witnessed a similar case in a neighboring town. A child brought back a dog that had been hit by a car, but she didn't survive the process. I was threatened to remain silent about the incident." The widowed millionaire felt the blood run cold in his veins. "Threatened by whom? And why haven't you ever mentioned this before?" His voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to moving capital in multi-million-dollar transactions, but also a growing desperation. By powerful people who didn't want these events to become public, people who believed that such abilities could be exploited. The doctor paused, observing the millionaire's horrified expression. The girl at the time was an orphan, just like this one. No one looked for her when she disappeared. The revelation echoed through the room like a gunshot, and the cruel stepmother, who had been listening to the conversation hidden behind the door, smiled for the first time in weeks. That information could be exactly what she needed to solve her growing problem with the little intruder. Meanwhile, in the back of the mansion, the humble cleaning lady lived her own personal hell. With each passing day, the resemblance between the street urchin and her own suppressed memories became more undeniable. During a routine cleaning of the child's room, she found small drawings hidden under the bed, figures of an adult woman and a small girl holding hands with tears drawn on both faces. The cleaning lady's heart broke as she recognized her own face in the childish features. Long-buried memories began to resurface. Nights of terror fleeing from a violent man, the desperate decision to leave her little daughter in safety while she alone faced the dangers that threatened them. The whispered promise that she would return when it was safe. "Clara," she murmured, gently touching the drawing with trembling fingers. It was the name she had given her daughter, the child she had abandoned 4 years ago to protect her from a father who had threatened to kill them both. Now, the girl she had sacrificed everything to protect was withering right before her eyes, and she couldn't do anything without revealing secrets that could put them both in mortal danger. The resurrected boy, seemingly oblivious to the drama unfolding around him, developed increasingly disturbing abilities. During one afternoon, while playing in the garden, he touched a withered rose bush and saw it bloom instantly. His words were prophetic, predicting rain hours before the first clouds appeared, or announcing visits before anyone rang the doorbell. "Daddy, the blonde lady is doing something bad," he said casually during breakfast, his innocent eyes fixed on the cruel stepmother who choked on her orange juice. "She puts things in the girl's food that make her sick." The widowed millionaire froze, his coffee cup suspended in the air. "What did you say, son?" But when he turned to question the stepmother, she had already regained her composure, forcing a sweet smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Children have such fertile imaginations," she said, running her hand through her perfectly coiffed blonde hair. "Maybe he's confusing medication with something sinister. You know how it is. After a trauma like his, it's natural for them to see threats where they don't exist." But the widowed millionaire began to pay attention to the details he had ignored before. The way the stepmother always offered to serve the street urchins meals, how she insisted on personally preparing the teas that supposedly helped the child's recovery, and especially how the girl's health consistently worsened after these apparent kindnesses. During a particularly dark night, the millionaire decided to investigate on his own. Using discreet security cameras he had recently installed, he observed the house's nightly routine. What he saw made him nauseous. The cruel stepmother, silently descending to the kitchen in the early hours of the morning, removing small glass vials from a hiding place behind the spices and mixing droplets of colorless liquid into the milk that would be served to the girl at breakfast. The discovery of the slow poisoning attempt was just the beginning of even more devastating revelations. Rummaging through the stepmother's belongings, the millionaire found extensive correspondence with private laboratories that developed substances undetectable in conventional medical examinations. There were also financial records showing substantial payments to specialists in discrete toxicology. But the most shocking was the discovery that his own son had never actually passed away. Falsified medical reports, bought with part of the inheritance she already considered hers, revealed that the boy had been kept in a drug-induced coma through sophisticated drugs. The stepmother had orchestrated the entire charade to eliminate the legitimate heir and assume total control of the family fortune. The plan was diabolical in its simplicity. Simulate the boy's passing, inherit the fortune as a grieving widow, and then eliminate any evidence of her treachery. The appearance of the street urchin had drastically complicated her plans, forcing her to improvise a strategy to deal with the child who had exposed her farce. Confronted with the evidence, the cruel stepmother initially tried to deny everything, but when she realized that her lies no longer convinced anyone, her mask of kindness finally fell. Her icy blue eyes flashed with a coldness that made the millionaire realize he had never really known the woman with whom he shared his house. "You think this filthy little girl deserves to live in luxury while people like me fight for every crumb?" She spat, her voice dripping venom. "She's nothing but a beggar with circus tricks. You're throwing away your wealth, your investments, all your profitability because of an illusion." The revelation that the family doctor had been blackmailed into participating in the scheme was the final blow. Documents hidden in his office showed that the stepmother possessed evidence of past medical errors, forcing him to cooperate with drugs and falsified reports under threat of destroying his career. That same night, as the truth unfolded like a nightmare, the street urchin had a severe seizure. Her small body convulsed violently on the floor of the room, and words came out of her lips in a voice that was not her own. "Blood calls for blood. Family must find family." The humble cleaning lady, who had been called to help during the crisis, could no longer contain her secrets. Tears streaming down her face, she knelt beside the girl and whispered, "Clara, my daughter, forgive me. I tried to protect you, but I ended up abandoning you when you needed me most." The revelation that the street urchin was the daughter of the cleaning lady who had worked in the house for years left everyone in shock, but there were more secrets to be revealed. And the cleaning lady, with her voice choked with emotion, began to tell a story that would connect all the loose ends in a surprising way. "My real name isn't what you know," she said, holding her daughter's cold hand. "I'm the twin sister of the wife you lost. I was kicked out of the wealthy family years ago for marrying a poor man, and when he became violent, I had nowhere to run. I came to work here without revealing my identity, hoping to be close to the only family I had left." The widowed millionaire felt the world spin around him. The woman who had cleaned his house for years, whom he barely noticed walking through the halls, was the sister-in-law of the wife he had loved deeply. And the street urchin who saved his son was, in fact, the legitimate niece of the boy he had resurrected. But the cruel stepmother wasn't willing to accept defeat silently. During the emotional confusion that followed the revelations, she disappeared from the mansion, taking with her important documents and a significant amount of money that she had secretly transferred from the family accounts. Her escape marked the beginning of a pursuit that would test all the limits of the widowed millionaire's determination. The last 3 months were an emotional roller coaster that tested the limits of endurance of everyone involved. The cruel stepmother's flight had left a trail of falsified documents and emptied bank accounts, but it had also freed the house from a toxic presence that poisoned every moment of joy. The street urchin, who now responded again to the name Clara, was hospitalized in the best private hospital in the sprawling metropolis. Doctors worked tirelessly to reverse the effects of the toxic substances that had been systematically administered for months. Her mother, the cleaning lady who had revealed herself to be the twin sister of the late wife, didn't leave her hospital bedside. "She's going to recover," the widowed millionaire repeated every morning, like a mantra that kept him functioning. His investments in stocks and Bitcoin had been reorganized to cover the best available treatments, and for the first time in years, he used his fortune for something that really mattered beyond profit. The resurrected boy showed impressive signs of recovery from the medical manipulation he had suffered. His seemingly supernatural abilities began to diminish gradually, revealing themselves as side effects of the experimental drugs that the stepmother had used to keep his coma state controlled. Doctors explained that certain neurological substances could create temporary connections between normally isolated areas of the brain, generating heightened perceptions that seemed like mystical powers. The true revelation about Clara's powers came through a team of experts that the millionaire had hired using part of his dollar-based assets. They discovered that the girl possessed a rare neurological condition that made her extremely sensitive to subtle changes in the environment and in the vital signs of other people. Her ability to awaken the boy had been, in fact, her ability to detect that he was still breathing weakly and to stimulate reflexes through techniques she had learned instinctively. "She doesn't possess supernatural powers," explained the lead neurologist, "but her neural sensitivity is so refined that it borders on the miraculous. It's as if she could feel life where others see only its absence." During those months of recovery, the truth about the family unfolded completely. Clara's mother revealed that she had been forced to flee after discovering that her violent husband was involved in smuggling illegal medication. She had worked at the mansion under a false identity, hoping to gather enough resources to rescue the daughter she had hidden in a local orphanage. The family doctor, freed from the blackmail that had forced him to participate in the stepmother's scheme, cooperated fully with the authorities. His confessions revealed a network of corruption that extended through several wealthy families in the area, all willing to pay for questionable medical services to resolve inheritance problems. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," he said during one of the sessions with the investigators, his hands trembling as he signed the full confession. "But she had evidence of a mistake I made years ago, a patient I lost due to negligence. My entire career would be destroyed." The hunt for the cruel stepmother extended for weeks, but she was finally located in a coastal town, trying to board a cargo ship with a falsified identity. The amount stolen from the family had been partially recovered, hidden in fraudulent investments and shell funds that she had created using privileged information about the millionaire's business. During her trial, she revealed disturbing details about her original plan. She had married the widowed millionaire specifically to access his fortune, studying his investment habits and profitability for months before approaching him. The boy's elimination was just the first step in a scheme that included eventually poisoning the millionaire himself after ensuring that all the inheritance was transferred to her. "You think I should be content with scraps while he swam in money?" she screamed during the deposition, her mask of elegance finally shattered. "I deserved that wealth more than a spoiled brat who never worked a day in his life." But the most shocking revelation came in the final moments of the trial, when documents discovered in her hiding place revealed her true identity. She wasn't the sophisticated woman she pretended to be, but a con artist with a history of involvement in similar schemes in other cities. The millionaire had been just her latest victim in a career of manipulation and fraud that spanned more than a decade. While justice ran its course, life at the mansion began to rebuild on more solid foundations. The widowed millionaire, now aware of how his wealth had been used against him, decided to completely restructure his approach to business and personal life. Clara was finally discharged from the hospital on a sunny morning that seemed to symbolize the rebirth of the entire family. Her physical recovery was accompanied by an emotional transformation, and for the first time in years, she smiled genuinely as she ran through the mansion's garden alongside the boy she had saved. "Now we're a real family," the boy said, holding Clara's hand as they watched the flowers they had planted together in the garden. His precocious maturity had gradually diminished, allowing him to simply be a normal child again. The widowed millionaire used his experience to create a foundation dedicated to protecting vulnerable children, using part of his fortune and investments to establish programs for early identification of child abuse. His own transformation was radical. From a cold and calculating man focused only on increasing his capital, he became someone committed to using his wealth for meaningful causes. Clara's mother was officially recognized as part of the family and received her legitimate inheritance as the late wife's sister. She used these resources to study social work, determined to help other mothers in desperate situations similar to the one she had faced. The family doctor, after serving a reduced sentence in exchange for his cooperation, dedicated himself to research on rare neurological conditions like Clara's. His guilt motivated him to work tirelessly to better understand these extraordinary abilities and develop ways to protect children who possess them. Clara discovered that her neural sensitivity, when properly understood and channeled, could be used to help others. Under careful medical supervision, she began to participate in experimental programs that used her skills to detect vital signs in emergency situations. "I always knew I was different," she said during one of the therapy sessions. But now I understand that being different can be a good thing when we use our gifts to help others. The boy developed a special connection with Clara that went beyond gratitude. They became true siblings, united by a shared experience that few could comprehend. Their games in the garden were punctuated by deep conversations about second chances and the importance of valuing every moment of life. 1 year after the events that almost destroyed the family, the mansion had transformed into a true home. The walls that once echoed with tension and secrets now resonated with laughter and warm conversations. The widowed millionaire had learned that his greatest wealth wasn't in his investments or dividends, but in the people he chose to call family. The cruel stepmother was sentenced to a long prison term, her crimes publicly exposed as a warning to others who might attempt similar schemes. Her complete defeat served as justice for all the lives she had tried to destroy in her insatiable pursuit of unearned wealth. During a quiet night, while watching Clara and his son play in the garden under the soft moonlight, the widowed millionaire reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them there. Every suffering, every painful revelation, every moment of despair had been necessary for them to find each other and discover the true meaning of family. Sometimes, the most important miracles aren't the ones that defy the laws of nature, he murmured to himself, but those that allow us to find love and hope when all seems lost. The story ended not with supernatural powers or imaginary riches, but with something much more precious. A family united by love, strengthened by adversity, and committed to using their blessings to illuminate the lives of other people who still struggled in the darkness. The real treasure they discovered couldn't be measured in money, but in the immeasurable value of genuine human connections and the shared purpose of making the world a better place.